Why do you keep putting it up there? Putting it up there. YouTube. You should be streaming. You should be streaming. Second one. Second one.
That's really working out. That's working out. Yeah. You don't know. You don't know. Hope the sound's working this time. Should be. Good to see. So this is F1 2022, as a lot of people will know, and we are heading for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. There's a little pretty hot lap for the Grand Prix. See how it goes. See how it goes. Yeah. So this is in the McLaren 720S, I believe. It's a chance to see how far you can get in the time given. So see how I do. I love this track, Imola. Quite dangerous and high-speed track, but nonetheless really fun. As you can see, when you go for a checkpoint, you also gain more time, so it's more of an endurance, just to see how quickly and far you can go around circuit. That's better. No, it does. So here you go through the last turn on the track. Clearly running a bit wide there. Still got a while to go, only done roughly around 5,000 meters. So this is going to be a tough one. Going to the first time. Using all the track we can. Running a bit wide there, it's not the end of the world. Running a really wide through there, that's not great. We go through here. Pretty much chicane. Just using all that circuit. Make sure not to lose too much speed through that circuit. Make sure not to lose too much speed through that. Yep, now up we go. Yep, now up we go. Sweeping left, and then we're going back down the hill. And then at F1 cars, you'll see this is taken flat out through there. And then at F1 cars, you'll see this is taken. And then change down to about gear 3 in the Formula 1 car, and back up we go. And then change down to about gear 3 in the Formula 1 car. Quite hard, and I'm starting to run out of time, which is not ideal. Quite hard, and I'm starting to run out of time, which is not ideal. I think I'm probably just going to lose out here. Yes, I am. Silver though, not bad, not the end of the world. Yes, I am. Give me some more points for that. Silver though, not bad, not the end of the world. Give me some more points for that, which is good. There you go. So that was a pretty hot lap. There you go. And now we've prepared for the first race of the weekend to make sure our tyre allocation's good. So as you can see here, we've got a medium and hard set for first practice, 2 set for soft for first qualifying, another soft set for Q3. Practice 2, and then the race we've got soft, medium, 2 mediums, and a hard, so not looking too bad here at Imola. Not looking too bad here at Imola. Just give me a sec. First checking some settings, that's all. Just give me a sec. First checking some settings, that's all. Just give me a sec. Yeah. Yeah, all sorts of fine. Yeah. Yeah, all sorts of. So heading. Probably going to do quick practice for this just so we can get on to qualifying. So you can either drive in person or you can do this, which is essentially the AI. You just run these little programs. If you get green tip, that means you passed. It's perfect, you've done it perfectly. If it's red, it's failed, then you have to rerun it. And at the top you can see the time it will take and the success rates of it. So here I'm just trying to don't go for 25% because yes, it's less time, but it just means I'm going to be using up a lot of time trying to actually succeed to do it. Of it. So here I'm just trying to. So there you go, that's one failed there. Because yes, it's less time, so I'm just hoping that this one's going to work. And it hasn't, unfortunately, and I've now run out of time in that first practice. The reason we do these sessions is to try and get points so that we can then upgrade cars later on down the line. And it hasn't, unfortunately, and I've now run out of time. So there's first practice. As you can see, here you've got qualifying laps because for a sprint race to look forward to, which will be fun. So that we can then upgrade cars. So this qualifying, this is not practice. This will determine where I'll be for sprint race, and then wherever I end up at the end of the sprint race will determine where I go for the actual race. So this qualifying, this is not practice. There you go, this is an F1 car now instead of the 720S. And you'll see a massive difference in performance. So here we come down the pit lane straight. Still going hard on the brakes through the chicane. You can see it's taken a lot quicker there. Massive difference in performance. Straight down here through the chicane. Really going for it now. You can see the car in front of me who's currently set fastest time. Now we're coming up the hill. Down here through chicane. Really going for it now. You can see through fast left. Now we're about to come down the hill again. Now back up the hill. Just trying to keep the speed up throughout the whole section. They're very hard to do right here. Hard braking zone into a chicane. Trying not to run too wide there. Now back up the hill. And now we're at the top of the hill. We're coming back down for the little downhill braking zone. Make sure you don't brake too late. Notch the corner. Last turn. Trying not to run too wide. Yep. Now we're at the top of the hill, we're playing back down for the little downhill braking zone. Make sure you don't brake too late. Notch the corner, last turn. Can't run too wide. Yep. So that was qualifying at Imola.
And with qualifying complete, let's review our top three today. Henry, Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. With qualifying complete, all that remains now is the main event.
So there you go, I qualified first 2 tenths ahead of Max Verstappen. Was great. So there you go, I qualified first 2 tenths ahead of Max Verstappen. Sorry if you guys have an echo a bit, the microphone's new and just needs a bit of wearing in, so that's also probably because I'm running the Nvidia broadcast at the same time, so turn that down a bit, see if that helps at all. Don't know if that's any better for you, but just hoping that it possibly is. Not sure if that's any better or not. So turn that down a bit, see if that. See. That should be better now. I'm sorry about the echo, guys. It's just got a new microphone, just trying to sort everything out. So just looking through all the R&D, which is performance. So here we are, back in practice again, trying to get some more points to upgrade the car. Beautiful, so race strategy has been okayed, which is good. Now it's just a matter of getting the rest of it done in this one practice session, so see how much we can get done. There you go, so I failed that one there, so that's going to waste a bit of time there, which is not great for what I want to happen. Here we are, just making our way through here. By the looks of it, I've run out of time to do the other session. Oh, I got that completed. Unfortunately, qualifying pace I haven't been able to do. Obviously, I could counteract this by going and doing it in person, actually doing the sessions myself, but it takes a really long time. So I am going to just go through that for now and go straight into a sprint race. So the way these races work is wherever you qualified, you'll start for this race. It's a shorter than usual race, so it's 11 laps here instead of 32. So wherever I finish in the sprint race will determine where I start for the proper race. So here we go, 11 laps around Imola. Just get ready for it to start.
Welcome to today's sprint. This is shaping up to be
Love Imola.
Let's run you through the
absolutely amazing track this. Nice and sunny as well. It's what we love to see. So this is our formation lap. This is just used to get the tyres heated up and ready for the race. So all the cars have to stay in position, so if you're first, you're leading the pack. If you're second, you have to stay behind first. Third has to stay behind second, so on and so forth. So it's one slowish lap. You don't want to go too fast, because otherwise I'll be waiting on the grid for a while. You can't see it, but in the bottom right I have a temperature of my tyres, and they're currently quite cold, so weaving side to side is just to try and get them warmed up in preparation for when lining up the grid. Ideally you want to slightly overheat them so that when you're waiting on the grid they cool down, so when you actually start it has time and it's at the perfect temperature. Just trying to get some heat into those rear tyres. Fortunately they're a bit cold, which is not really what I wanted. There you go, it's starting to come up to temperature now, which is nice. As you can see, I'm keeping the revs fairly low because I don't want to put too much wear on the engine, because I've already got some problems going into this race, which is not really what I want. But it might mean that during the race we have a mechanical failure, which would not be ideal for us in the championship standings. So just trying to get some temperature into those rear tyres. The front tyres are good temperature wise, but those rears are still a little cold. Just trying to really work some heat into those tyres. So here we go. Planning on doing the whole sprint race in this one set. Shouldn't have any need to pit, but you never know what happens during a race. So here we go, just making our way to the grid. What most people tend to do is just stop here, do little burnouts just to get a bit more temperature in those rear tyres. Here we go, just lining up on the grid now. And I got a bad parking, which isn't ideal. Means that I'm going to be slightly behind. So for people to behind me park up closer, that means the gap won't be quite as far, which is not ideal. But here we go. Sprint race at Imola. And it's lights out, and here we go. Got a bit of tyre spin, which wasn't great, but I got a better start than most people. So just making our way. I'm going to go defensive to make sure that I can maintain the lead into the first turn. And there you go, done it. You can see the cars behind me there. Now, it does say I have a potential engine problem, which isn't great. And that would be my gearbox has a slight problem. It's like it's quite worn down, so we might see some gears disappearing later on into the race, which would not be good for the race which I'll be doing after this. So just got to be a bit careful on how many shifts I'm doing, so try and keep the gear shifts to a minimum. Now what I'm trying to do here is just pull away from Max Verstappen behind me. That's what I don't want to do, is when we get onto lap 3, DRS will be activated so they can open up that rear wing and really close the gap. So I just want to try and pull away as far as possible right now, so that when we come to that I won't have to deal with them with DRS. So here, come down on Main Street. Max Verstappen's got quite a good exit, and he's really using that slipstream to try and catch up with me here. I'm just going to use the ERS, which is the electronic systems in the car which provide more power, just to try and keep ahead of him coming into this first turn. As you can see, he's really close to the gap up there, so just going to try and see how much I can etch away from him so that he doesn't have that DRS. A bit off circuit there, which isn't great. Got a bit of grass in the tyres. Going back down the hill. hard braking. Don't want to brake too hard there. Just want to avoid locking up. There you go, you can see I'm starting to pull away now. Just try and keep the gear shifts to a minimum, because we just want to minimize the damage that we do to the gearbox, so that I don't have to take a penalty for swapping out too early. Oh, Leclerc, my teammate, set fastest lap there. As you can see there, DRS has been enabled, so Max Verstappen will have DRS. Oh no, oh god. Max Verstappen just taking me out there. That is not what we wanted. He just completely lunged up the inside, and that is not good for me. As you can see, it's just completely dropped me down, which means I'm going to have to start fighting my way back, which is not ideal because it's just going to put unnecessary wear on these tyres. But we've got to do it so we can get a good starting place for tomorrow's race. Yeah, just trying to catch up with Fernando Alonso, and then we'll be looking at getting Norris after that. Go, Alonso's going to go defensive. Let's see if we get switched back. A bit of contact there, and I have to go rubble strip. That is not what we wanted there. Just close the gap up immediately. So what we're going to try and do is save ourselves for a DRS zone here. See if I can show you what DRS is. So you can see here, you'll see rear ring flies open. That's what DRS is, and it just reduces the drag. So you see, greatly improves the straight line speed of the cars. So you can see I'm just going to go flying around on the outside of Fernando Alonso, not giving me much space there. Oh, two-way through there, he's really going aggressive. This is not good because Lando Norris is now disappearing away from me, which is really not ideal because I want to be as high up as I can going into Sunday's race. You see, just deploying the ERS to try and get past him. Going up the inside there. That's a bit of a bold move, but let's see if we can make it stick now. Okay, he's backed out now, which is good for me. I'm just going to cut him off there because we don't want him to come back later on. But now you can see Norris has made a nice comfortable gap, and with lap 4 of 11, it's going to be hard to catch him again. But I'm hoping that I can use the superior power in the engine to catch up with McLaren, because they have not been doing too well this season. Running a little wide there, not the end of the world.
Okay, gap to the car ahead is 2.8 seconds.
There you go. Fernando Alonso trying to go for a move again. Really is not happy that I overtook him. But he's now got Ricciardo backing him up as well, which is going to mean that he's going to have to start defending from Ricciardo. So I'm hoping that means I can start to pull away. Stay in third gear for here, try and minimise the gear shifts. As you can see, I'm not really gaining on Lando, which is a bit of a problem. But I'm just hoping that he's getting backed up by traffic, which is going to allow me to catch up. As you can see, I'm finding it quite hard because I'm having to think about Fernando behind me, which means trying to catch up with Lando is going to be a bit of a problem. Yeah. If you haven't already, I'd appreciate if you go to my TikTok. It's Henry House Racing, and go and follow me on there because I'll be posting videos about Fiesta racing on there. Also hoping to get some onboard videos in Fiestas, so I can put that on TikTok and YouTube. for you to watch what onboard videos in a Fiesta Junior car looks like. So make sure you put notifications on so you know when that's happening. As you can see, I've got about outside of a second of Fernando Alonso. I know you can't see, but I've got the timings and lap, so I know how far away Norris is in front of me and how far behind Fernando is. And if you're within a second of the car in front, you can use DRS. But if you're outside of that second, you're not permitted to use DRS. So Fernando is currently outside of DRS of me. As you can see, I'm just trying to close this gap on Lando Norris for the end of the race. As you might have seen, that incident Max Verstappen's really set me back, which is a really big problem for tomorrow's race, as I'm currently leading the championship, but this is not what I wanted for the beginning of the season. And I've nearly ran out of the battery for the ERS, which is a bit of a problem. Here we go. Currently on lap 7 of 11, so I'm just trying to get closer and closer to Lando Norris and Esteban Ocon as well, to try and get double overtake on them in order to secure fifth place, sorry. Because the higher I can start for tomorrow's race will mean that the better chances of winning the race. Obviously, it's going to be quite hard to win the race from that far back, but hopefully we'll have a superior strategy to do that. As you can see, I've really closed the gap on Lando. Still got a few laps, so the chances of me overtaking is now starting to look a bit more promising. Now I'm within a second of Lando Norris, which means I should be able to use DRS, providing I stay within a second. Coming over this white line here. Not sure if I quite got it or not, so we'll have to wait and see. Yes, I did. There you go. DRS is about to be deployed. This means Lando won't have superior advantage over me, as he's got DRS on Esteban. So you see, DRS gives you about 10 more miles an hour going through straight, which might not sound like a lot, but when you're going that fast, it does make a difference. You go really close to the gap, as you can see now. Now that I'm this close, I can start to use something called slipstream. Because these F1 cars have so much downforce because the air pushes down on top of them. Missed your gear there. And when you're close enough to the car in front, you don't have to split that air yourself. And you can just follow in the what we like to call dirty air behind. That just means that there's less drag on the car and you can go faster down the straights, and that again gives you a bit more speed. You can see I've really closed the gap now and just trying to stick with him. As you can see, he hasn't managed to get past Esteban, but a bit of contact there. I braked a bit too late. Wasn't quite expecting him to brake that early, but there you are. So now I'm just going to try and utilise the ERS, the DRS and the slipstream to try and just close that gap a bit further, so that going through this first sector I can probably try and do an overtake. Here he goes, trying to make a move on Esteban. Results in a bit of contact. I'm just going to stick out of the way as they're fighting. I'm going to follow Lando through for this turn, trying to hit the inside line. Going to let them fight it out. They're really going for it. Oh no, there's a bit of contact as Esteban sweeps back over to the right, and I've now got front wing damage, so this is going to just make my life even harder. This is shaping up to be a really good fight here. Trying to make my way around the outside, and I make it stick. That is a great move there. Esteban's really lost out here. Now I need to put the pressure back on Lando Norris to try and secure fifth place, sorry. Russell's outside of my grasp now as he's in third, but he's 7 seconds ahead of Lando Norris. And with what is 2 laps left, that is not going to be possible. unless he were to DNF, and then I might be able to secure a podium. But it doesn't look like here is a podium chance, unfortunately for me. It's just one of those races, unfortunately. But here we go, you see I'm just closing in the attempts of dropping down, and visually you can just see the amount of time you can gain through the use of DRS. Running a bit wide there, that's thanks to the front wing damage I have. And Esteban Ocon's really closing that gap now, which is making me just a bit uncomfortable coming into this braking zone here. Because the last thing I want is Esteban to retake the position. Just trying to stay within a second of Lando Norris so I don't come out of the DRS zone, because that would be really bad for me coming down the pit straight with Esteban Ocon right behind me. Go back up the hill. See, I'm really just trying to keep on pulling away just to maximise the chance of not getting overtaken again down the straight. So just using the battery to try and get out of that braking zone. So coming into here, Esteban just as outside of a second, and then I can utilise the DRS and ERS to try and get past Lando Norris. It's not looking great though. Even with DRS, I don't think it's going to be quite enough for turn 1. Although it's coming close. Not quite enough though for turn 1. And now we're on to the last lap of the race, so it'll be all down to whether I can get it done in this lap, or whether I'm just going to have to stick with 6th place for this race. Have to wait and see what happens. I don't think I'm going to be able to get in this lap, unfortunately. Just too far away, and with that front wing damage, it's just made it really hard to get around these corners at the same pace he is. So, back up the hill. Esteban Ocon has been overtaken by Fernando Alonso, I see. Not sure if that was team priorities or whether he just pulled the move off, but Fernando is now within a second of me. He's rapidly closing up as these tyres have suddenly shot off the cliff. They are really, just understeering off the side there. And it looks like we're going to come home in 6th place for the sprint race, which is not where I wanted it to be, but it's where we ended up. So see what I can do in the proper race with a good strategy. Charles Leclerc in drive of the day. Some more XP there. So, where did Max Verstappen? Max Verstappen down 13th because of that incident. That might mean he went into the pits because of that. That is annoying because it means that I just look at the standings. Is Leclerc's definitely closing that gap now, which is not what I want to be seeing now. However, we do have a whole season ahead of us, so I should hopefully be able to increase that gap as time goes on over the course of what is another 20 races, I believe. Does look like we're going to have wet weather for this race though. Yep, all wet conditions, which means we'll be on extreme wets, I believe. Which is going to really put the struggle, because in the wet, DRS is disabled, so you won't have the advantage of DRS, which means you really have to utilise the battery and have a good strategy for the race. But it does mean that the strategy is kind of thrown out the window, since in the wet weather you don't really have a strategy, as the tyres tend to last a lot longer. Just have a quick look here. So it wants me to do 2 intermediate tyres instead of full wets, which is an interesting course of action, but we'll go with it, I guess. Most people seem to be on the intermediates right now. Here we go for our formation lap again. I'm just going to keep the gears drifts down because I appear to have a bit of a gearbox problem, which is not ideal. You'll see this formation lap I'm not weaving around because these tyres work best when they're cold, as they're wet weather tyres, so you don't actually need to put heat into the tyres, which makes them a lot easier to use on formation lap. But as you can see, I'm not changing my gears because I'm just trying to preserve the gearbox as much as I can. So what I don't want to do over this 33 laps is have to retire halfway through because of a gearbox problem. That would be really annoying and would really affect the driver standing, since Leclerc is only really 4 points or 5 points behind me, which would mean I would lose the lead of this championship as long as I don't finish in front of him or Hamilton, which means essentially I have to win this race from 6th on the grid, which is going to be a challenge in the wet, but hopefully we can use my skills in the wet to pull it off. Here we go. Got the anti-stall kicking in just to make sure I don't stall my engine. But I'm just trying to preserve that gearbox as much as I can so that we don't have a failure halfway through the race. So that would be catastrophic for those standings. There we go. Just going through the last turn here to line up on the grid for the start of the race. There's Lando Norris and McLaren. Here we go. Time to line up on the grid. Okay, so we're starting right behind Russell and the Mercedes. And I got another bad parking, unfortunately. And Lando Norris is going to be just in front of us. So the aim is to get past Norris ideally and keep the two Alpines who are behind us at bay for that first turn. That is going to be the aim. Not a great start though, which means that's really going to affect. You can see how much of a bad start. That's just because he got some wheel spin in this wet conditions. Just going to try and go up the inside there. Fernando Alonso is just trying to avoid having contact there. I had quite a bit of contact. Fortunately for me, though, I got without any front wing damage, which in the wet would catastrophically affect what I can do. Because downforce in the wet is the only thing that keeps you on track. So you really have to make sure you don't damage anything. But this is a really good comparison to show you the difference in wet weather and dry conditions. Is that especially coming out of those hairpins, that the car in front's really going to pull away as you lose traction coming up the hill. Here's usually flat out, but you have to brake before to make sure you don't go off. Norris really fighting with Alonso there. Just trying to maximise the exit. You can see he just gets away from me. Just trying to use the ERS to bring it back there. Go through the last turn. You can see how much that car just pulls away in the wet. This Ferrari really does not like the wet conditions. It's an absolute beast in the dry. But the moment you put it in wet conditions, it just does not perform how it wants to. Got a fairly good exit there, just trying to keep the pressure on the McLaren. Absolute lunge up the inside, let's see if we can make it stick. Just keep it nice and tight. Norris still just hanging on there. Really using the ERS here to try and keep it up here. Got the inside for this turn and he has to release that position to me. Now we're hunting down the Alpine of Fernando Alonso. See how close we can get to him. Now this will rely on when people pit. Just depending on that will depend when I go in. But I don't want to go in too early, but I don't want to go in too late either. Because I could try and perform an undercut and pit early, but I could lose out on positions instead. Yeah, just try and maximise our exit there so Fernando Alonso doesn't pull away too much. So just trying to catch up Fernando just out of the slipstream, which is really not good for me. Just trying to stick with him. In the wet, this Ferrari just does not like to perform. See if we can go for another lunge. Oh, he's just... That was a bit ambitious there, but I'm just going to see if I can keep it there. Just giving each other enough room. That was a bold move from me, but somehow I managed to stick it without involving us to it in an incident, which is good to see. And now the aim is to see whether I can catch up with George Russell in the car in front. There you go. Gaining a bit of time on him, but coming down straight, he has the advantage that he has a slipstream through here. And going down the main straight, you have the slipstream from Perez, who's the car in front. Charles Leclerc setting a fastest lap time. It's good for him, he'll be out in front. I set a fastest final sector, which is good to hear. But just need to get a move on now and see how much time I can shave out of George Russell before the pit window opens. And the question is, do I go in early and risk having worn out tyres by the end of the race, or do I try and string these tyres out to the very end and have fresh tyres at the very end to put the pressure on? Just try and use all the circuit without going outside of track limits, really shaving a good amount of time out of George Russell. He doesn't quite have the pace that the opponent Perez in front of him has. Going through the chicane. So for the penultimate corner, here's the last corner. Just try and maximise the exit. That was not bad. Now it's just a matter of getting right gear shifts. Hope the gearbox doesn't fail.
The car behind started to drop back. There's a gap beginning to form. Let's make the most of it.
Sorry about that. That was my brother. Always having younger brothers. Now just trying to keep up with Russell, so see if we can do that. So coming back up the hill using that battery just to try and maximise the power output coming up the hill, because that is where you will lose a lot of time. But really starting to close that gap. This Mercedes is not performing well in the wet weather. Ferrari just seems to have a bit more of an edge over that Mercedes of Russell. So we're really starting to close in the gap here. Seems like Leclerc has just shot off, as I can only see, up to second place. But actually no, I can just about see Leclerc, which means he's not totally out of reach. Where we have Russell, Perez and Hamilton all to get through before that. I went just a bit too wide out of the last turn, which means I've lost a bit of time coming down here. I've set fastest lap, which is what we like to see. Which means we might be slightly drier now. But it seems like we do have a gearbox problem, which is not what we want to hear. Yep, my gearbox is definitely wearing out, which is not good. because that could mean that I lose a gear, which means coming up the hill would be really hard, especially if it's one of the lower gears. We go into the braking zone again. As you can see, really making some headway against Russell. Just trying to maximise the time I can gain on him on the sets of tyres before having to pit for a new set. But I'm not too far away now, so could be looking at a podium finish possibly, which wouldn't be bad, but what I ideally want is to catch up with Leclerc before the end of a race. This is going to be a bit of a hard race to win, but not impossible to get a podium.
Leclerc's in first place.
Really pulled away from Fernando Alonso there, which is good to see. Just still trying to make the inroads with Russell though. It seems that the main place I'm gaining is into the braking zones, the turns. So it appears like he's just not quite confident in the brakes and braking a bit earlier, which I will have to look out for when I come up close to him. Make sure I don't brake too late and end up rear-ending him. There we go. Looking good. Made about a 10th since last lap, which is not bad. And we're on lap 7 of 32, so we've still got plenty of time to catch up. It's all just a matter of maximising the speed. I've gone a little wide through there, so that's really going to hurt me coming out of there. But as we come back down the hill, I'm just hoping that I can make a bit more of an inroad into his time. Get to the last turn, deploying the battery to try and get the best exit. So you can see still just pulls away out of a turn. Let's see what I can do. Like I said last video, I'm sorry if I go a bit quiet sometimes, it's just that I'm trying to focus on the race at hand.
Sorry, I don't know.
Going a bit deep into the turn there, which isn't great. That's going to really affect me coming back up the hill. I'm just losing about 2 to 3 tenths per second off Russell, which is really not ideal. Coming back down the hill, gaining the time again. You go back up the hill. Yeah, you're just gaining that time, just getting the slightly better exits. Back down the hill again, seeing how much time I can shave off Russell for this lap. Do have the fastest lap of the race, which is promising because it means that I should be able to catch up with all the people in front of me. Whether or not I'll be able to catch up with Leclerc, though, is another option. So hopefully we can get to second, but Gearbox is having some problems now. Just hoping that we don't get a catastrophic failure or a gear that disappears, because those two things would really hinder the progress of this race. But for the past 8.5 laps it's held up, so I'm just hoping that holds up for the rest of the 32 laps that we've got left. Go. You can see really caught up with Russell now. Really putting pressure on now. Ooh, having a bit of a slip there, but still just laying down the power faster than me. see if we can keep the slipstream for the main straight, which really give me an advantage going through here. But just try and maximise the output. He's still, since he's a car in front, got a slightly better exit, but that's to be expected. So just see how much ground we can make this lap. I am in a better position than I was, but it's still not the best position I could be. So let's just see how much time. Oh, Max Verstappen coming out of a session. Wonder if that's a technical fault or whether he's been taken out. But that really does help me in the championship standings, as the main competitor Max Verstappen has been taken out of this race, which is going to be less points for him. And also better for us as a team as well, which means Max Verstappen and Red Bull won't be able to catch up quite as much. But my aim for the championship standings, for the driver standings, is to get past these Mercedes, so that Mercedes don't start catching up with us. George Russell just playing the long game here. It's lost a bit of time in that last sector, which is not ideal, but here we go.
Yellow flag. Okay, be aware there's an
There's the yellow flag.
no overtaking through
Wonder
the yellow
where
flags.
he is, Max Verstappen, part to the side. That looks like a technical fault for him,
Flag.
which I am not complaining about, because that Red Bull is really fast. Particularly in the wet as well. I find that the Red Bull just loves the wet weather racing and just completely obliterates the rest of the grid. Well, this Mercedes does appear to have some pace though compared to us. You can see without DRS it really does make the race a lot harder.
Everything's looking good.
Just going a little wide there. Unfortunately not getting picked up by the FIA. Which is always not a bad thing. Yep. Really just trying to put that pressure onto Russell now. Really just on Russell's gearbox now. I take a bit too much curb there. That's really going to affect my run out onto pit straight. You can see there he's just gained all the time back I've made out of him doing that lap. And Perez and Hamilton are just starting to pull away now, which is really not what I want to see, as it means that I'm starting to lose ground on them as well.
The Ferrari driver has the lead.
Probably could have tried to risk dive bomb, but I don't think it's worth risking the damage. I think it's better just to try and cleanly get past him. Went a bit deep into that turn, which isn't great. Oh, just took a bit too much curve there. Just shot the rear out. Come back down here again. Still just trying to keep up with that Mercedes. As I said, they seem to have a slightly better car. He didn't quite get the exit he wanted there, which means I'm just going to be back close, much closer. When coming down the main straight, you can see the slipstream type starting to take effect. As I just start to close that gap on him. Take a bit too much curve there, that's going to affect my run again. But not by too much, so I'm just hoping that coming into the braking zone for a hairpin, I'll be able to really put pressure on. I'm a bit too far back to go for a move once again. Got a better run back up the hill. Looks like a bit of a problem for me.
Leclerc's out in front.
Sliding around a bit there, which is not good for him. Daniel Ricciardo out of the session as well.
Serious car issue. It looks like they're retiring.
That Mercedes just lays down the power a lot better than this Ferrari. Should probably look at the powertrain and upgrading the engine a bit more, so we can lay that power down a bit more compared to that Mercedes, so you can see it's starting to shoot off again. These tyres are really worn out now. And that gearbox is really starting to feel the pain now, which is not good. Losing the gearbox means I also lose power. So yeah, he's starting to slip away from me now, which is not what I want.
Caution, caution.
The yellow flag will be for Daniel Ricciardo, I believe. But we're about to enter the pit window, and I think probably my best chance is to perform an undercut at the pit earlier than Russell. Or we'll just have to wait and see what they decide to do. We go a bit deep into that turn, which is going to hurt my run out of here, coming back up the hill. Really on his gearbox there, but again, coming out of the hairpin or the chicane really, the car in front always going to get a better run because they put down the power first.
Light rain will stay with us for at least 20 minutes, maybe more. Light rain is here to stay.
They're a bit closer now, which is good to see. Pit window is open for me now, so I can pit now if I decide to from laps 15 to 22. That is the designated pit window that I've decided. So I think I'm going to pit this lap and then try and just put the power down as quickly and try and perform an undercut on George Russell. Obviously if he pits this lap as well, that's going to be a problem, but they might prioritise Hamilton, which is kind of what I'm hoping here. Just have to wait and see. As you can see, I've pretty much matched George Russell's pace, but with these worn out tyres plus the gearbox problem, it's going to be hard to get on this podium now. It's looking less and less likely that it's going to happen. Oh, run a bit wide there. That's not good.
Okay, Mark here. You're causing unnecessary wear to your transmission. Try to take it easy or we're going to risk losing it.
Okay, the best decision is hit now, I think. I think that's going to be my best option. Oh, I went a bit fast into... That's not good. That's a 5-second penalty for me. Coming into the pit lane a bit too fast, which is not what we want.
Fantastic stop. Fast.
But I'm hoping that I can use these new tyres to form an undercut. But this is not looking like a good race for me.
Pit strategy complete.
Coming out of the pit lane. And we are behind Tsunoda, so now the plan is just to blitz it and see if we can gain a bit more time on Russell. But I'm going to have to gain a lot of time on these Mercedes if I ever want to have a chance of overtaking them because of that 5-second penalty. Going up the inside of the AlphaTauri of Tsunoda. There he is. Now we're going on to the not championship leader, but 4-time world championship Sebastian Vettel on the Aston Martin. And obviously, as you can see, I'm on the fresher tyres, so I've got more tread, which allows me just to keep that power down a bit earlier. And it also gives me a bit more traction as well. I'm just making sure I don't brake too late and go into the back of me either. That 5-second penalty is not going to be good for me going into the championship standings. Is the last thing we want. Or really on the bump of the Aston Martin then as he rejoins. Thankfully he's going to stay here and give me a slipstream all the way down this pit straight. You can see here really just putting the pressure on now. As I try to go around the outside, he goes deep into the turn, perform the undercut. That was beautiful. And Sebastian Vettel's really lost out there, and now he's been overtaken by Tsunoda as well. Make sure I went a bit too wide there. Here's Hamilton. This is the person I would be racing right now. So this hopefully means that I would be able to perform an undercut. Obviously it wasn't going to work on Hamilton. He appears to have gained a bit more of an advantage over me. Unless it's just the fact that he hasn't pitted, which could be the answer. So that he just hasn't gone in yet. My teammate Charles Leclerc, who is currently leading this race, has gone to the pits. But his pit stop on a new fresh set of tyres. I believe what's happened is Hamilton hasn't gone in yet. We go through the last turn here. Hamilton, well, might have pitted actually. Zhou Guanyu in the pits, everybody's peeling in now. I've set fastest lap. And see where I come out compared to everybody else. Will the undercut work on Russell? Yes, it will! That was beautiful planning there. Ferrari strategists actually doing their job once, which is good to see. Now they just need to do that again in real life. But I haven't actually overtaken Russell because of that 5-second penalty, so I need to be 5 seconds clear of him going into the final lap and over the checkered line. I need to be 5 seconds ahead of him to secure this place, which is not going to be easy as he has a newer tyre compared to me. I'm just hoping for a bit of a miracle here. I'm hoping that my pace is just a bit stronger than his. What I'm hoping is I can catch up with Perez and have Perez between me and Russell, so that Perez kind of acts as like a doorstop in front of me and Russell and slows Russell down enough for me to make a gap. But Russell just appears to be sticking with me for the time being. And Hamilton does appear not to have gone in yet, which is a bit weird. Or he might have actually. He might have performed an undercut on Charles Leclerc, my teammate. Again, another fastest lap there, really flying now. Now it's just hunting down Perez now as the next goal. Just making sure Russell doesn't get too close. That's the last thing I want. Still matching my pace. Going back up the hill. Page got a slightly better exit. Oh no, George Russell got the better exit from me there. He's gained a bit of time there. I'm just hoping through this middle section here that I can gain a bit more time on him. Got a fastest sector 1, which is nice to see. Still just starting to pull away. As you can see, really starting to close the gap on Perez now as well. But it just depends on how good my pace is, whether I can actually overtake Perez or not. Slightly missed the apex there, which is not great. but really starting to leave George Russell. But ideally I need to have a few laps where I recharge the battery, but I just can't do that with George Russell still having a slightly faster pace. But currently I'm running 5th with the 5-second penalty as Alonso's 15 seconds behind George Russell, who's right behind me. Getting a really good exit out of there, which is good to see, start putting pressure on the Red Bull. Again, just trying to make sure I stick with him coming up the hill. Really good exit out of there. Seems like Perez is slightly struggling in the wet conditions, which is a promising sign for me. Really just trying to stick with him there. Lost my speech, sorry. The curve really there, just unsettling the car and getting a bit of tyre spin, which is not ideal. Really on him now, look at that. Again, drive around the front, gets power down first. But coming into the highest speeds, that slipstream starts to take effect. A bit too much over the curb there. Still starting to pull away from Russell, which is always something promising to see. Again, a bit too much curb there. Oh, we got a back mark of Latifi here. He's slowed the pack down for me, which is nice. Starting to fight with Russell, not Russell, Perez as well. There you go, just slowing down to let me by, which is nice of Latifi. Yes, now the 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton's leading the race. Just coming back down the hill, seeing how close I can stick to Perez for the main straight. It's just pulling away again, which is not ideal for me. He's just got a slight better run down the main straight. And these tyres are now starting to drop off. This is what I feared, was that later on in the race, pitting early means that I've got older tyres compared to everybody else, so they've got a lot more grip than I do. Which is not great for me, because it just means they can lay the power down a lot more. And it just prevents me from getting past. Oh, just having a bit of a moment there, Perez. Seems like he's struggling with the rear tyres a bit. Oh, I've gone a bit too deep into the turn and I've had contact with Perez. That's really going to affect me now. It's really backed me up, and you can see that Perez, even though we've got no damage, he has actually gained a bit of an advantage from Max. It now means there's a massive gap between me and him, which means I will not have the benefits of a slipstream coming down the main straight. I think my main goal is now just to stick away from Russell. He's still got an advantage over me because of that 5-second penalty, unfortunately, so it looks like my race is going to be finished in 5th place. Why I need to be careful and always look at his speed over entering pits. Here we go, back up the hill on lap 23 of 32. not looking promising, but just have to do my best to see. George Russell starting to gain time on me as well, which is not good, but my gearbox is again at critical now. 78% damage, so this is not looking good for me as my gearbox is failing. My tyres are completely shredded and I have no battery left either, so this is going to be a hard race. Yeah, it looks like I've had a gearbox problem. My gearbox has started to cut out, which is not good. I'm just going to have to see if I can nurse it round for the last laps. And I was not paying attention to the apex there. But I'm just going to keep an eye on that damage. It's the last thing I want is my gearbox just to cut out in the middle of this race. I'm really going to have to think about how many gear changes I'm doing to make sure I don't kill my gearbox. Not looking good. I've still got, what is 8 laps to do with this gearbox that's on its last legs. This is going to be a hard race to finish. Again, that gearbox just not providing the power I need. Still got quite considerable pace compared to Perez, but it's just not enough. But again, their fastest lap shows what you can do even with a damaged gearbox. But I have a bad feeling that this gearbox is about to cut out, which is the last thing we want. But unfortunately, there's quite a high chance of it happening. There we go. Going back up the hill. Definitely closed the gap and pulled away from Russell. Russell's now what is 1.8 seconds behind me. Started to close the gap on Perez, but it's just not quite enough. With this gearbox, I just don't have my car's just not quite good enough to get past Perez, unfortunately, I don't think. Still showing some pretty good pace though, which is surprising for the damage I have. That was a great exit from me, but Perez still just laying down that power better than me. Mechanic just telling me I've got possible option of pitting again since these tyres are wearing out very quickly. The question is, do I go for another pit stop or not now? Diving up the inside of Perez, that was a bold move, but can we make it stick? Yes, we can. That was a last minute move there. That was a last ditched attempt at me to get past Perez. He was just looking for a move, but I shut the door on him there. I'm just hoping that Perez now backs Russell up, slows him down. And here I am behind Leclerc, my teammate. My gearbox just reached 80% damage, which is not good for me. But oh, I've lost my second gear. This is not good. I have no gear 2, which means in these tight turns I'm going to be limited to only third gear. You can see there it goes straight down to gear 1. I've lost my second gear, which means I'm going to have to replace that. Just hoping I can nurse this round for the last 5 laps of this race, or whether I'm going to have to retire the car. I'm in a decent position. Unfortunately, I'm still running 5th because of the 5-second penalty. But as long as I can break away up from Russell, I might still have a chance of coming 4th.
Keep taking care of them.
Just trying to pull away from Russell and Perez as much as I can. Fortunately, with second gear not there and it being gone, it's really affected my times, as I can't go down to second there, or through the chicane I won't be able to go into second there either, which is going to cause massive problems for me. As you can see, I have to go down to stay in 3rd there, which means coming out of here I'm going to have a massive disadvantage. You can see the clerk just pulling away there. Still just managing to keep it all together, but my pace is definitely not the best through here. I've managed to match my sector 1 and 2, but sector 3 is down, which is not what I'd like to see, but here we go. Got 4 laps on lap 28-32. See if there's anything left in the bag to possibly secure a victory here. Well, I won't be able to secure a victory, that is not bad, I did not mean that, but to possibly gain an extra position by getting out of 5 seconds of Russell. It's not looking good, but I'm gonna try my best. Gearbox damage is still just going up every lap. Oh, gear 2's back, that's good to see. Just hope that another gear's not gone. It seems like the mechanics have done a good job and retrieved that gear of mine. See there, Leclerc not putting away quite as much now that I've got that second gear. Just means I have that slight more power output. But that definitely affected me when I didn't have that second gear. Just doing my best to keep it all together. Again, I'm about 3 tenths off my fastest lap time. So just have to see what happens, I guess. We are still matching George Russell's pace, which is not what I want. I ideally want to be going faster than George Russell. But unfortunately, that's not quite possible. But it looks like I'm going to have to possibly stick with 5th place for this. If you guys were wondering, this is not the only game I'll be streaming. I've already done a bit on Assetto Corsa on my YouTube account. I'll also be doing iRacing as well. Possibly some Assetto Corsa Competizione. But just to let you know that this is not the only game I will be showing you. iRacing is a bit more serious, as there is proper ratings, and you can also get money from it if you're good enough. Here you go, on to lap 30 of 32, leaving me with 2 laps left to get as much ground as I can on George Russell. And I've got a bit wide, unfortunately, there. That's going to affect me there. 2.7 seconds. Yeah, I've lost a lot of time there. The one thing I'm going to have to look at after this race is getting a gearbox durability upgrades to make sure that I'm not replacing these gearboxes as much. So So that is not one thing I would like to be doing that much. I don't think I'm going to go try do a move from Leclerc. I think I'm just going to stick behind him, because our pace is fairly similar, and admittedly I'm not going to get anywhere with this 5-second penalty, so I'm not going to try and fight him. I'm going to let him try and push against Hamilton and see if he can take the win or not. It doesn't look like that's going to be possible for either of us. Perez still making a bit more ground on me, which is not a sign I want to be seeing, but with the state of the gearbox and these tyres that are now very worn, this is not looking good for me. Fortunately, if I didn't have that 5-second penalty, this would have been a good race, but unfortunately that 5-second penalty has just stopped me from getting where I wanted to go. And I'm starting to lose that pace now. These tyres are starting to give up, which means I am starting to lose traction in these turns as I start to aquaplane, which is the last thing I want, but I can definitely see and feel it's just ever so slightly creeping in. And we're on to the final lap. George Russell is setting a fastest lap time. Now my aim for this lap is just to hold off Perez as much as I can. But with him really being close, this could be a struggle for me to do so. Unfortunately, this just wasn't one of my races. Perez really starting to close the gap, which is the last thing I want to see. You can see just coming up the hill, he's gaining so much more time. Really starting to close that gap up, which is not good for me coming into a chicane here. Just see if I can get a better exit than him, that's all I can do, unfortunately. But he is closing that gap faster and faster as he comes down into the penultimate corner. Doesn't seem to quite have it. Looks like I am going to be coming home in 5th place with that penalty. So it's not the end of the world, but it could be better than. But unfortunately, it just wasn't one of those races. And we're going to look to do better in the next race, with Lewis Hamilton getting driver of the day.
They take the checkered flag then here in Imola.
Yeah, it's nice to see a Brit up on the podium.
And I can see the drivers starting.
Just wish it couldn't be me.
So let's see what effect this result has had on the drivers' standings.
They are, I've got 13 points there. Let's see, look at the standings. Lewis Hamilton taking the lead by 10 points ahead of me. I've dropped down 2 places, unfortunately. And with George Russell starting to close the gap there, this is not looking promising for me. Looks like my main rivalry is going to be Mercedes. There we are. So, thank you guys for watching this stream. I am going to come off now. But I hope you enjoyed watching the weekend at Imola. And I hope to see you next time on the stream.